Hitting the buttons to go live.
Hitting the tweet saying we're live.
Yeah, hitting the tweet saying. Does it not push out a tweet automatically when it says we're live?
Oh, I just do it for me.
Oh, okay. And yeah.
Hello,
cool.
Internet.
Yeah, it looks like we're live. Why don't you address the non-existent?
Hey, everybody!
fan base?
All the everybody on the internets. We are here.
Yeah,
We're going to be talking
in.
about 27 Brad's GeForce RTX 2070. Don't pay attention to Kyle's.
I got
He'd have
two
an
of them.
NDA. No. So, yeah, 2070. We'll be talking about, of course, what everybody else wants to talk about with the Principal Technologies controversy.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Yes.
What about the Oakland Raiders? You know,
What about the
Las Vegas Raiders? Yeah, so just as a joke, we were talking about how we had a fear that what if for CES, when you have 220,000 nerds in Las Vegas, what happens if there's an NFL playoff game? And that's apparently why they had the Raiders move to Las Vegas, because we're going to pick a team. You don't have to worry about that for a long time. So that's not a problem. That's a joke. Because they're moving out of Oakland.
they're moving. Rusty's
Again.
here. Clay's
They'll be back
here.
in 15 years.
Will's here.
They'll be back.
Right. Oh, we got Will is here from the. He says EUK, Electronic UK. He's here.
All right.
And then Clay said they were first, but then Will corrected him and said he was actually first. You know how chat goes.
Yeah.
You know.
I was first.
Yeah.
You were first. All right.
Brad,
we ready?
Brad was here
Firsties.
first. Yeah. You know what?
Or we still
I think I'm ready.
Buttons?
I think I'm ready. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Let me already. Let's see. Okay, ready? What the hell am I going to say for that? All right, got it. In this episode of The Full Nerd, the best ray tracing card ever, and even more benchmarking controversy. It is like a soap opera.
At least.
Welcome to The Full Nerd, episode 72. I'm your host, Gordon Maong, with co-host Brad Charkis.
Hello, Internet.
And special guest, Melissa Riofrio.
Hi, Internet.
And, of course, Adam Patrick Murray controlling the vertical and horizontal. We're going to ignore what he's going to say because he's going to try to take us off course, I bet.
I am not going to derail. I'm
What?
just going to note that, hey, if you hear loud banging again, like during the intro, just know that they're not here to pound down the door and get
Our rents.
our rent checks. They are doing construction right outside this studio, so pardon the noise, but hopefully it'll be kept to a minimum.
Well, I'm
That's
really
3
surprised.
weeks in a row. Are they being paid by the government or something?
You know, how many times can you paint one wall white? You know, that's the question.
Well, they have to have somebody else come in to do the primer coat, and then somebody else do the white coat.
That
and
makes
then
sense.
Don't forget the inspectors.
There's an inspector.
You
And
gotta
then the
expect-
CD comes in with the hands out. Got a permit for that? Yeah, we got the permit right here for paint. Yeah, you got it for paint. You didn't give it the primer coat. Oh. And so now you got to strip all the paint off, put the primer coat back on. Anyway, that's exactly how things are done in the city of San Francisco. And I can tell you this because obviously they didn't inspect that, whatever, the $1 billion transit
Oh yeah, didn't
Transbay
that just
Terminal.
reopen, or are they going to reopen it next Monday?
They
or
reopened
something?
Fremont Street,
Oh, okay.
and they've shored up the cracked beams.
So people don't understand it. What we did was we built a
San
$1
Francisco
billion
News.
bus station. I'm not even kidding. It's $1 billion
beautiful. It's
bus
actually
station.
beautiful.
Yes.
$1 billion with a B. And apparently they didn't inspect the steel, so it's cracking already. And it's just like after 2 weeks of being open. Yeah. Good job there.
Well, see, I think the thing is that it was probably already cracked, right? Or do you think it cracked from the use of being open?
We don't know whether they inspected it. All we know is that the cracks appeared shortly after it opened. And by the way, everyone, it's American steel.
Yeah, America.
We did it. We did it our own way. But
I know. I've inspected a couple of different GeForce RTX 2070s, though.
oh yes, that's what I want to talk about. So Brad, I'm sorry, I've been busy doing other things this morning, so I haven't even read the reviews.
What? How
I
could
did
you?
read Kyle's yesterday to kind of get a preview of it. Kyle, bent
Oh,
over
you're
hard.
stabbing me in the heart.
Sorry, I just.
I read Kyle's too yesterday,
Yeah.
but you got to read mine as well. So yeah, I've actually got 2 reviews up at PCWorld.com. One of the Founders Edition, which only a handful of sites actually got sampled that. We're one of them. $600. I also have a review of the $550 EVGA RTX 2070 XC.
Wow.
And basically, if I'm going to TLDR it, if you already own like a high-end GTX 1080 or a Vega card or anything like that, there's no reason to upgrade. But the RTX 2070 is faster than the GTX 1080. Cards will actually be available for less than the Founders Edition, starting at $500. The EVGA one I reviewed is $550, and they include all the ray tracing and AI technology. So this is the first RTX launch that I think I can clearly say, you know, if you're in the market for a $500 graphics card right now and don't already own one, it's the way to go.
Really? Actually,
Yeah.
so actually
I
recommend.
would buy it.
So of course, we also have to factor price into this because 500. I'm actually. Did you say 550 or 5?
The one I have is 550. It's the EVGA RTX 2070 XC. So it comes with factory overclock and a nice ICX cooling design without all the sensors and stuff. It's $550. I saw like Jay's 2 cents had a $500 version that didn't come with an overclock. All these cards are launching tomorrow at these prices.
Oh.
So, whereas with the 2080 and the 2080 Ti, you know, Nvidia said, "Hey, these are going to be $700 and $1,000," but in reality, all the cards that come out are priced at much higher Founders Edition Plus prices. You're actually going to be able to find cards near MSRP tomorrow. I'm not sure how many cards, because there were some issues getting $500 review card samples from various GPU manufacturers, like. Nvidia clearly wanted the $500 cards tested. A lot of them weren't. A lot of the manufacturers out there weren't ready to send those out. So I'm not sure how many there will be available tomorrow, but there will be some. So
At 550, and even at 550, that's not too bad, I guess. Right?
At 550, I love this card. It's across different games, an average of 9 to 13% faster than the GTX 1080 Founders Edition. In some games that respond really well to async compute, it's over 20% performance increase. The EVGA version that I tested is never topped 66 degrees, whereas the Founders Edition is 73 degrees or so, which is really good for a Founders Edition part, but that's $600. So, this EVGA part I think is really compelling.
What does the Founders Edition card look like? Is it a blower style?
No, it's the same as the other ones, just smaller.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's
So
tiny.
I have
it's actually really cute.
I have a question. So is $500 sort of a sweet spot for a high-end card?
If you want
too
really
damn high.
fast 1440 gameplay, $500 is a great spot. If you're looking for 60 frames per second 1440 gameplay, like if you have a 60 hertz monitor, the GTX 1070, the 2-year-old card, is still, around $350, and that's still really compelling. But if you're looking in the $500 price range for really fast 1440p, this card, because of its performance increase over the GTX 1080, especially if you have an adaptive sync monitor, you actually can get by with entry-level 4K gaming on it too. This trumps the 1080 and Vega 64, I think, especially with all the promise it has for the future. I mean, we haven't seen ray trace games or DLSS in actual games yet, but this will get you in on the ground floor with the 15% performance boost. You can get another 5 out of easily overclocking it. It'll take you 10 minutes. It's worth it to me.
So here are the takes from the internet.
It's been divisive this morning. I've been reading.
Really?
Well, at least the internet that is joining us, all you fine people. Rusty says feels good to know that they can hold on to their 1070. And what was it? David says there you can find a Strix Vega 64 for $300 on sale. Just bought one.
If I'm always hesitant to buy used. I'm guessing at that price, a Vega 64 was used. If you can find a Vega 64 at that price, buy it in a second. One of the interesting things, knock-on effects, I think, of this launch, which I didn't really get into in my reviews, but I think I've mentioned on the show in the past, is that by making the 2070 $500 now, Nvidia kind of made Vega 64 more compelling than it's been in a long time, because Vega cards can get paired with a FreeSync monitor, And FreeSync doesn't have the premium pricing that G-Sync has. So if you're looking to pick up an adaptive sync monitor, I mean, Vega's back in the game because Nvidia priced these cards so high.
Right. At the same, if you're doing a full package card and monitor.
Yeah. I mean, I think my perspective is from someone who doesn't feel like spending $500 on a graphics card. It's like, what? And so I'm looking for something more in, as cheap as possible. But,
you're not alone.
300, 350,
1070s are still good. Yep,
And
the RX 580s are still great cards these days. You can find them on sale all the time.
And we're also coming off of a year where cards were super inflated in pricing.
Yeah.
And so I think that also kind of hurts for me that, I'm still feeling that hurt. And that's another reason why I don't really, like $500 is still kind of painful for me.
A couple questions, Brad. Let's see. Drew is asking, how much slower is the 2070 to the 1080 Ti?
2070 to the 1080 Ti. So if you actually want to consistently hit 4K 60-ish, maybe toning down some graphics options, you're still going to want to go for the 1080 Ti. It is a faster card. I don't have those numbers offhand, but it is measurably faster.
Okay.
So I think if the numbers are right in my head, the 1080 Ti was about 33% faster than the 1080. And the 2070 is about 10 to 15% faster than the 1080. So I would guess that the 1080 Ti is about 15 to 20% faster.
So get the 1080 Ti.
Yeah,
$700.
If you want to spend that much money. I mean, it's another 100, 200, 150 bucks. So it depends on your budget, what you're looking to do. Really, you should always look at resolution because your monitor is actually what you're buying for when you're buying a graphics card.
And then on Nap is saying thoughts on the GTX 1488 edition.
1488
what that is. I thought maybe it was something I was not in the know.
Yeah, I don't.
All right.
Gee, so I got
one thing that Melissa, I just want to come back to about Melissa talking about the $500 price point. Mm-hmm. One thing about this whole RTX generation launch has been the prices that these have launched at. Because like Nvidia wants us to compare the 2070 against the 1070 or the 970. But those cards have traditionally been $300 to $400. This is a $500 graphics card. I mean, I included the 1070 in my review just because the numbers match up. Mm-hmm. But really, price to price, it matches a GTX 1080. And it's only about 10% faster in performance. The RTX 2080 is head for head with the Ti. And it is kind of disappointing that, 2 years later, we're not seeing much generational increase for the same price point. And that's a bummer.
Yeah.
And the meta view. But I think the way I approach my review is realistically, my graphics card just blew up. I'm looking to go buy a new $500 graphics card. What do I want to buy today? And I think the RTX 2070 is better than all the other options.
So real quick, sorry, Ishan is saying 1070 was essentially a 980 Ti, but the 2070 is essentially a 1080, and costs more. How does that make sense?
It's all those RT and Tensor cores and the fact that AMD doesn't have a competitive card.
Yeah, they don't have to. I do. So can we infer any kind of ray tracing performance to Shadow of the Tomb Raiders? I mean, that's enabled now, right? Isn't the ray tracing enabled in Shadows?
Nope. No? It is enabled in Windows now, so they can come out.
Assuming you have all your files.
Assuming you have all your files. Actually, the October update still isn't even available publicly yet, although it's still on my computer. So never mind. It will be available whenever Microsoft has that stop eating files. But it's in Windows. Once Windows stops eating files, it'll be available. But there are no games that have enabled it yet. Shadow of the Tomb Raider looks like it'll probably be the first one because it's already out. That'd be my guess. Battlefield 5 comes out next month. That's another candidate. I'm not surprised that we didn't see it before the launch of these cards, actually, because the 2070 has half as many ray tracing cores and tensor cores as the 2080 Ti.
Huh.
And we have no idea what that's going to do for actual in-game performance. Yeah. So if it cuts it in half, I wouldn't be surprised if Nvidia didn't want that available to benchmark on day one.
I mean, but that's what everybody's fear is, that 2080 really sort of the base of how of what you can run ray tracing at. Everybody sort of thinks 1080 at 40 frames a second, maybe if you're lucky, 40 to 50. 1070's
nobody knows.
2070's got it. Yeah, nobody really knows.
Nobody knows. I'm not going to speculate because the ones that they showed at the Nvidia editors day for this at Gamescom. They were all running on a 2080 Ti, but they were all very, very early. Like the majority of developers there had only been using it for a couple of weeks, and they said they had a lot of optimizations left to come. And developers can do all kinds of implement it in different ways and use different tricks and stuff. So I think there'll be a variety of performance outputs or whatever results that we'll see. And I don't want to speculate on it yet, but the fact that the 2070 has half as many cores as the 2080 Ti, you have to think that's going to make a difference, though.
Right.
Brad, I think you also brought up a good point that you're buying your graphics card for your monitor. So unless you have a super high-res monitor, that's another reason why you may not really need this card. Like my monitor at home is a 1080p monitor. I'm perfectly happy with it. It's nice and fast. It doesn't sound like there's any reason for me to get a 2070, let alone a 2080, because I can get along with another card that can do 60 frames per second at 1080p, no problem. And a lot of cards can do that.
And that's the majority of gamers today. If you look at the Steam hardware survey, the vast majority of monitors are 1080p 60. You can get by with an RX 570 for that, which is under $200 these days. So.
Well, and here's the other thing: if you have a deep, trove of games that are older games, they don't ray trace, they don't have any future stuff, and you love them, you don't need it for that either. So I'm not dissing the future. The ray tracing stuff looks really intriguing, and I love to see more uses of DirectX 12. This is all good, but I think there are a lot of users for which this isn't something they have to rush out and buy yet.
Gordon calls those legacy gaming.
Legacy
call
gaming.
It conventional, rasterized gaming, whatever you want to use. Conventional. I mean, if it does take up. Do you think because people were just really viscerally angry about 1080 or 2080 and 2080 Ti. 2070 are people pretty like, pretty happy, or are they?
I think the overall reaction will be meh. Yeah. I don't think people are going to get as angry with this as they did with the other cards. The problem with the 2080 Ti is that, yes, it's the fastest graphics card ever. Yes, it can do things in unlock monitors that nothing else could ever do before. But it also costs $500 more than its predecessor. Like, Melissa's sitting here saying there's no reason most people should buy a $500 graphics card, and that's absolutely true. And the RX 2080 Ti costs $500 more than its predecessor. It was over $1,200.
Not to mention...
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, not to mention there's not a game out to support it. We don't know anything about actual benchmarking on RTX stuff.
I would be happy giving the 2080 Ti an Editor's Choice Award just because of how much butt it kicks in traditional games, because it is faster than anything else out there, flat out. The RTX 2080 is only as fast as the 1080 Ti. And like you said, there are no games out there to use it. And actually, street prices, it's $100 plus more expensive.
Is it?
1080.
I haven't checked on the 2080 price lately, but I mean, it's
still $100.
You would still say, I mean, I don't want to do all this, relitigate this all over again, but like this 2080, the 1080 prices are just pretty stupid if you ask me. What
happened when the 2080 came out, when we did the show? I said, man, I really wish they would have given it, 10 to 20% more performance so you can justify buying the card and saying, hey, it's a little bit faster than what came before, and I have the promise of this new stuff coming. So you don't feel like you're getting ripped off, like you're spending the same amount of money or a little bit more just for the future. That's what you're doing right now with the 2080. They bake that into the 2070, and that's why I like it so much more, because it's 10 to 20% faster. It's justified. It's a better purchase right now, and the extra stuff is just a cherry on top.
RCF is asking, do you think DLSS will be pretty well implemented when the next RTX season arrives?
That totally comes down to developers. The initial canned demos that Nvidia sent us was very promising, and 25, I believe, different games have already signed up to support DLSS, including some big ones like PlayerUnknown's Battleground, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the dinosaur game Ark Survival Evolved. So there is interest there. I'm kind of surprised that we haven't seen any of those yet, because while ray tracing needs those bits in the Windows 10 October update to unlock, DLSS in theory should work now. So hopefully we see them sooner than later. If it winds up being very impressive and it doesn't require much work on the developer end, I mean, why wouldn't it blow up? know what I mean? But we're going to have to see.
Funny note from Bastel says the RTX cards is like buying a new car with an existing AC not working yet. It's the promise of AC in the future, you know.
I was just looking at the prices of 1080 cards because I haven't looked in a little while, but they're solidly.
They creep back up. You could find cards on sale. Same with the 1080 Ti. You could find them on good sales before the RTX cards launched. Yesterday, when I was checking around, the GTX 1080 was back up to $480 for the cheapest one, new. There were some refurbished ones you can buy, cheaper. But the cheapest new ones were $480. Yep. Earlier this year, we were seeing them for $420 on sale, but that's gone now. They're going to try to get as much money from you, regardless of whether you buy GTX 1080 or RTX 2070.
Interesting. I wonder if it's the vendors upping the prices or the retailers going, oh, now there's going to be a run on 10 series cards, so they just up the price, you know?
Probably a little both.
Either way, you're paying for it.
Yeah. Mr. Roboto is asking any word on a 2050 or 2060. Is there anything in the rumor mill?
Haven't heard a whisper.
And that can't have ray tracing though. It'll be just probably
that'll be GTX,
right?
I guess.
So,
yeah.
I wonder if those are just simply they're going to be the salvage dies where the ones they just shut off all of the Turing and ray tracing cores.
I wouldn't be surprised if they make less complicated dies for those lower end models because, I mean, I think it's not saying anything that's not obvious now, but with the struggles they've had getting the RTX 2080 Ti especially out, I mean, you're still seeing 2080s sold out pretty often. I think it's clear that adding those RT and Tensor cores make these much, much bigger, more complicated dies, and I think they're having some supply issues. So I think if they could just get rid of those and have a cheaper SKUs, GPUs, that only have the CUDA cores with the improved integer pipeline and stuff like that, I think that would be smarter, personally.
What do you think the 2060, whatever it's going to be, would come out at, though? I'm kind of wondering just from a price point of view, because everything's kind of crept up now at what 1070 is now $500, 1080 pricing. So you sort of assume
I have no idea. I'm not guessing anything at this point for the future. I still think that this RTX series might be a short-lived stopover to something next year on 7 nanometer. I think if they do make a GTX 2060 and strip out all the Tensor cores and RT cores and stuff, they would have to be price competitive with whatever AMD has at the time. So I think they would be lower than these RTX cards, lower priced. But we'll see. It's a real weird launch, man.
It is, isn't it? It's just hard to figure out. Everything is just kind of off. Everything just doesn't. It is crazy to think a 2080 Ti is $1,200, right? Titan pricing. So
yeah, but everything will change if we actually get some games that use ray tracing.
Yeah,
it's awesome. And who knows? It's going to depend on performance, I think, because ray tracing does look awesome. Like, it was real cool seeing the reflection in windows and stuff in the Battlefield demo that I saw at NVIDIA Demo Day. But if you're buying a $500 to $1,300 graphics card, you have a 4K monitor or a high refresh 1440p, are you going to be willing to drop resolution down to 1080 if that's in fact what happens in order to get real-time ray tracing?
Yeah.
Right.
So it's going to depend on performance, and that's why I don't want to guess performance or ray tracing yet at this time.
Yeah, that is a weird one too, right? I mean that's what everybody's been saying. Like, who's going to sell for 1080p? But maybe it looks so good. So 1080, if you want to play ray trace, 1080 with the ray tracing on might look pretty damn good. Enough to make that sacrifice of 4K high frame rate.
I'm curious to see if they can make their two flagship technologies there like a combo deal. I'm not sure if they can because of the way real-time ray tracing is handled in real time. But if they could combine ray tracing and DLSS, that might be able to help. But I'm not familiar enough with all the back-end version of that stuff to make a guess there.
Yeah. And you got to say, I mean, as much as everybody's angry, it is the right time to do the experimenting. I mean, there's no repercussions of screwing one up because what are they worried about? AMD showing up with something?
They must have fist pumped so hard when Vega 64 came out. Jensen's just, yeah.
Did the availability of
turbines a go.
Did the pricing and availability on Vega get any better as of right now? I've got like
you can. It comes and goes in waves, usually waves tied to RTX launches. Around the last few RTX launches, you could find Vega cheaper. Right now, I was just checking the Vega 64, and it's still $570. So you definitely want to get an RTX 2070 over that. So if you can find one, we found sales for them for MSRP or slightly below. I mean, if you're looking to pair it with a FreeSync monitor, it's still a good price.
Right. That's the last hole for them. So
in a way, it does allow them to sell more graphics cards at higher prices, because we're sitting here saying, well, you don't really need it. So that helps the prices of the last generation cards stay higher, because people aren't, ditching them for the new graphics card. So they can just play this out, keep the new ones around until ray tracing comes around, and they're making tons of money off of us.
Or Nighthawk says you can buy a console and a TV for that price and you're good.
Sure.
Boom.
Sure.
Done.
Yeah. We want to play games, though. Good games. PC games.
Burn.
I could do that in a console.
Everything did line up well for Nvidia to take this gamble now, though, because it is a bummer as a gamer for there not to be great increases over the past 2 years. But really, 4K is still super minority. HDR is still super minority.
True.
AMD isn't really competing on the high end. So if you are going to take the risk and put all this advanced hardware in it and say, hey, now's the time we're going to try for industry, this is the perfect time, as much as it is a bummer for us gaming fans until it comes around.
Well, the low end, there really are people, everybody likes to diss people who go out and buy, RTX 2080 Ti cards, but there are a lot of people who build, they just want the absolute best, and they want two of them. They don't care what it costs. So, I mean, people are building Threadripper, and they're building Core X boxes. They're not worried about like, oh, I'm going to put a 1060 in this thing. They want something to show off, right? So there are legitimate people out there like that.
If PC gaming's your hobby, buying a $2,000 G-Sync HDR monitor and a $1,300 2080 Ti to go with it is a lot cheaper than if your hobby was rebuilding cars or whatever.
Yes.
A lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Very sure.
A lot of crossover.
So have we heard anything from AMD to respond? Do you think it'll happen by the end of the year? What do you think?
I don't think so. I think next year we'll see Navi and 7nm parts. There have been rumors the past couple of days of a 590 showing up in some database somewhere, but nothing to compete with these RTX cards on the high end. And we'll have to see about the 590. There's a reason we don't cover rumors very often.
Well, and Lisa Su is doing the keynote at CES, right? Mm-hmm. It could be a perfect time to say, hey, listen, we're back in the GPU game. We were first to ray tracing,
If they could say, hey, we're the first 7nm CPUs, and hey, we're going to announce the first 7nm GPU consumer GPUs here too, that could be a mic drop moment. So
it could be, and people like those big announcements.
Do they usually stream those?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. See the Samsung one with Michael Bay. Perfect example. Advice. Don't book Michael Bay.
I remember
Don't watch them. They're so boring. Just wait for a press release if you have to know how to feel it.
Yeah, but
Thanks, Brad. Gordon and I are going to be stuck there.
This could be it could be exciting because this will be an AMD focused keynote, right? So it could be PC focused very well. I'd hope oh my God, if she got up there and talk about drones, people would be like, oh
no, there would be riots.
I'm remembering that stream ahead of Vega where they're like, we're going to have big info on Vega from the Capsaicin stream. And Roger Kadori goes out there for an hour and talks. And then at the very end, and here's the big news.
Yeah.
These Vega GPUs, they're going to be called Radeon Vega. Yes.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's pretty
You
good.
wonder if it's one of those things where you're down to the wire, like, stretch it out. It's like, the card's not here? We were going to announce it.
But Drew on YouTube makes a good point. Does AMD even need to compete in the high end? The RX 580 is still competitive for the majority of gamers.
I would recommend a 570 or 580 for the majority of gamers, to be honest.
But... compete?
You got to have a high-end product to have mindshare.
Yeah, I agree.
I know AMD's been playing hard for the market share part of it, but mindshare, it's hard to quantify it, but mindshare plays into market share. If your company name isn't in the headlines, then people just aren't going to think about it as much when they're out there buying an affordable, GPU or CPU or whatever.
Yeah, and I think it's wrong to take that tack of, hey, we don't care about high end, we're just going to do low end. That's what got AMD into trouble with doing that ARM stuff, right?
Yes.
That was like, oh, we're going to do ARM and servers. Yeah, that went nowhere. That was really all of the success now is because they want to be competing at the high end, with Threadripper and Zen and these really good cores. That's put them back in the game. It's better for everybody.
Absolutely.
And we want them to compete at the high end. Oh my God.
The way it works with technology too, if you're not innovating, then eventually you're just going to drown. So
right. And then people forget, like, RX 580 is not RX 580. It's RX 480 with one more number, right? So it's some old parts. Still a good part, good for practical for most people, but if you don't reach for that ring, you might just go home. So
it's just as old as the GTX 1080, which is still in contention with the RTX 2070.
Is it? No, 580, is it?
No, those were both at the same May, June of that year.
God, that's just...
I had to work my kid's birthday and my birthday, so I remember it.
Yeah. Right.
Well, you know what? Dark Titan on YouTube reminded me that, AMD owns the console space, so maybe Lisa Su goes up at CES and just talks console the whole time, right?
Whoa.
The future of console.
No, that's not going to happen.
It's consumer electronics, Gordon.
Yeah, right?
The thing with AMD is they will never announce anything about consoles. They always let the partners talk about it.
Very true.
I've asked them questions about... real-time ray tracing and FreeSync support and stuff like that. Is that coming to Xbox too? You guys make those chips. They always go, you got to ask Sony, you got to ask Microsoft. They're never going to make an announcement for their partners.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it'd be good. Oh, yeah.
Well, no, I think what's going to happen is that Iwata, or no, not Iwata, I'm sorry, Shigeru Miyamoto is going to come out on stage and say, hey, listen, the new Nintendo Switch, which used to use Nvidia hardware, is now going to use AMD hardware. Just kidding. No,
I don't know. I don't think that one's going to happen. Sorry, this doesn't seem. No.
No. Just pulling here. All right. Anything else on the review? It seems a little,
It's a good part.
Yeah,
it really is.
Good part.
So you would definitely say 2070 over 1080. Somebody going to Newegg Amazon, 500 versus 500, 550 versus 500.
I would. If you can find a GTX 1080 on a really good sale, like we were seeing earlier this year, if you can get a GTX 1080 or even a GTX 1070 Ti for around $400, that might make the difference for me. Because the 1070 Ti, they all come factory stock clocked, but you can overclock them right up to 1080 level. So that's kind of a sneaky way to get a good deal.
Yeah.
If you can get one of those for around 400, maybe a little bit less, I mean, I might be swayed by that. But if you're going out saying, hey, I'm going to buy this classic card right now, I think the 10 to 20% performance boost and the promise of RTX in the future, which on top of that performance boost makes it definitely the card to buy.
Wow. So Brad can recommend 2070. First,
I'm pretty much the only person on the internet, it seems like. Everyone else is a lot of other people complaining about the lack of generational performance improvements.
Yeah. I'm
trying to keep it more focused, like here in the real world. Like I agree, it's a bummer that it's not 30% faster, but today, if you're buying a $500 graphics card, that's the one you want.
Right. Ultimately, that's what it comes down to. Yeah, you want to say like, yeah, we wanted more Nvidia, but how could you? Would you tell people to cut their nose off to spite themselves? I don't get it.
That's what I had to think about. That's what I was keeping in mind as I was writing these. Something else that just as a final RTX series wrap up, Nvidia has an Nvidia scanner tool, an API that's in all the most popular overclocking tools. So I love Precision X1. That's the slickest one to me. But basically, you press a button that says scan, and it'll go through a voltage curve, figure out the best voltage curve and overclocking potential for your particular GPU. And then at the end, you click apply, and it's got a custom overclock right there. You just press the button, walk away for 20 minutes, come back, hit apply, and you've got an extra 4 to 5% performance. So
Nice.
if you buy an RTX graphics card, even if you don't get into overclocking, do that. There's a power limit slider. Crank that all the way to the right. Save it. You're good to go. You get an extra 5% on top of whatever RTX graphics card you buy.
Huh.
It's super easy. Go do it.
Nice.
Although, remember, overclocking your video card could lead to failure of hardware.
Not with this. They say with Scanner, it doesn't. Scanner doesn't
Really?
avoid anything.
But even so, upping the power limit to max does not risk blowing the card up.
I
They'll
didn't
say,
go
well-
into that much detail when I was asking questions. But these cards are power limited. Nvidia still has it on lockdown. Just increase the power as much as you can. It's a real slider.
Yeah,
it's a
so
real
it's-
easy slider to move over.
There's a good rubber wall to keep you from really hurting yourself, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice.
Okay.
Cool. Well, why don't we talk about an actual controversy?
Oh, gosh.
Shall we?
Is anybody kept up on this? The latest thing. This is, of course, Principal Technologies in the center of the storm. We talked about it last time. They're just in the middle of this storm with upcoming launch. No secret, Core i9-9900K. Versus everybody else, and they did a bunch of testing that everybody disagreed with. The latest, they went back to their credit. To their credit, they did go back, and of course, this is after Steve from Gamers Nexus went down, did that whole 60 minutes Mike Wallace thing with them, and they went back, they retested everything, and 2700X looking a lot better, right? Looking a lot better than it did when you're running it as an 8-core CPU instead of a quad-core CPU. Surprise!
Yeah, so they fixed some of the methodology, but not all of it even. So
no. Although I think it's good though, because it really sort of it makes you go like, oh, if they change the RAM, they change the cooler and all that stuff, then
yep,
you wouldn't even know what to make of it. Now it's clear that there 90% of the game saw a boost.
We didn't go into details. So originally, PT compared the 2700X and the 9900K. And the 9900K in some games we're seeing 40 or 50% leads over the 2700X. And everyone's like, yo, that's not right. What's going on? It turns out they were running the Ryzen Math utility in game mode, which is intended for Threadripper chips because the way they mix all the dies together and stuff, not all of them talk directly to the memory. So what it does is cuts off half the cores to just the ones talking directly to memory, which is good for Threadripper. But they were running that on the Ryzen chips. So essentially the 8-core 2700X was turned into a 4-core chip. And that's the reason why they were saying 40 to 50% performance leads for the 9900K. They retested it now with that turned off, the chip actually running how it's supposed to, and it's looking closer to 10 to 15% now.
Yeah, depending on the test. And there was a game that did actually get a couple of them that got a little bit slower, but not much, not enough to really matter. So, I got to say, and of course everybody's really upset about this. They see this as trying to tilt scales before the launch, to try to change perception. A lot of people think it's like related to pre-orders. No, nobody's.
I think it's lame. It's lame. I think pre-orders are lame. But I think it was not malice. I think it was ignorance, personally. I mean, because PT is, like we were saying last time, they usually do system integrator level stuff and enterprise stuff, and they're used to Threadripper. They're not used to running game tests on consumer chips. So if they're used to running, game mode on Threadripper, I can understand why they.
I mean, it literally does say game mode. Titan in the chat said, "Hey,
But I think the reason is I think people were really, really sort of like triggered initially, and I agree because before Steve did his interview is game mode plus downclocking the RAM plus stock cooler. God, was there something else too? I mean, they were just like so many. Oh, and plus only 1080p gaming. So. Although we can discuss that again.
So did Principal actually say, gosh, we were wrong?
Yeah. They said, they said we're going to go back and test. We didn't know these things. So
they said they were wrong with the game mode. They did not change the coolers, which is another big issue. Yeah. Because they're saying AMD says the 2700X chip with the cooler, that's good enough. So we use that. And they stuck a high-end Noctua cooler on the Intel parts.
It's like $70.
So that makes a big difference because the AMD chip, Intel as well, but the AMD chip especially, is very susceptible to being able to hold higher clocks at cooler temperatures. So it's still not 100% apples to apples test. But the fact that it's down to 10 or 15%, even with AMD at the cooler disadvantage, is, I think good for AMD and maybe not what Intel was looking to have going on the week before this chip launched.
Right, especially after making the claim of best gaming CPU.
So
still best though.
Has Principal exonerated itself, or are we still suspicious about whether they're maybe not trying hard enough?
It depends who you ask.
Yeah.
Commenters will tell you. Many commenters will tell you one thing. They think it was a conspiracy.
Right.
I personally, between watching Steve's interview with the co-founder and seeing that they did lay out the methodology so well, then they said, oh, we didn't realize that about game mode. We turned on the thing that said it'd be better in games, so we'll go back and turn it off, retest. And they did just republish those. I think they've exonerated themselves as a company pretty well. I still think the cooler issue is still an issue, but wait for independent reviews anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I can't say anything about performance. Actually, I can't say anything at this point now. So I've already started testing.
Gordon just said nothing, everyone. He said nothing.
Because before we started testing,
he's really good at that.
We could guess. I could guess, but now I can't because now it's just.
I haven't tested anything, and I think this whole thing was just them shooting themselves in the foot, releasing this to begin with. Because, in my opinion, not knowing anything about Gordon's tests, with just the clock speed and IPC advantages that Intel holds, if they put out an 8-core 16-thread chip that competes, thread and core count with the 2700X, it is going to be the fastest gaming chip in the world. That's my 100%, not tested, but that's 100% what I believe. And this is just a brouhaha of Intel's own making at this point. I think that was unnecessary.
I can say this, Brad. I realize I can say this and remain within the scope of, our embargo. It's very much, it's like Tom Brady.
No. Excellent.
No, seriously.
You're talking to a Patriots fan here.
Come on.
You don't want to.
I'm not a Patriots fan. I'm not a Tom Brady
I know you're not, but
he's arguably the greatest.
Did you see that game on Sunday?
I was that on TV? I didn't. But no, arguably the greatest quarterback of our time, right? Mm-hmm. Easy. Do you have to go and cheat too? Do you got to go let the air out of the footballs too, right? You're going to win. You're going to win. You're like the greatest quarterback in, oh my God, and probably ever. You could argue that. I agree that is arguable. But do you have to cheat? Do you have to go and then to take the locker room dude and throw him under the bus and then have the team bus run him over twice? Right? I thought
Brady was guilty as all that. You're not going to get a rise out of me, man. But I agree. That's a good analogy.
But it's a very good analogy because you knew, like, oh my God, Tom Brady's, come on, he's got such a great chance. But let's let the air out of the ball. There's sort of, it does kind of mess up this launch a little bit. It's sort of like, oh, can't you just get a clean launch without some controversy? But no.
The ironic part to me about all this is that it's over gaming. I mean, if you're going to buy a $500 chip for gaming, you're probably not gaming at 1080p. You're going to be gaming at 1440 or 4K with a higher end graphics card where the CPU performance is going to matter less. I think the big draw for this is going to be in productivity applications, to be honest. And the fact that they, got so much bad PR out of gaming when it's not even really going to apply in the real world in a lot of cases. And the way it was tested is just crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, but they're pushing really hard on the gaming thing because, it's...
Because it is going to be the best.
It's more interesting. No one cares about productivity.
Yeah, it doesn't... You don't really get out there and get a stadium full of people cheering at that Excel spreadsheet. You don't think like... Office Sports. Office Extreme Sports. Watch it run that Excel macro.
And I do. I mean, you will pry desktop Excel from my cold, dead hands. I don't even like Office 365.
Except for Outlook. Outlook, you can get off right now. Stop on the bus. Outlook, get out.
But yeah, it's much sexier to talk about gaming and show the vivid images and everything. But what I don't like is that Intel was already leading with overpriced chips. And so to me, what's interesting is that they paid Principal Technologies to run these tests to try and make it look better. Like, what are you scared of?
Yeah, Intel? I mean, that's what I think a lot of people are sort of, it's just like the Brady thing. You don't have to cheat. A lot of people think they're cheating, but I think it's just simply, there's other things at work here, obviously. Mm-hmm. Because there's no really other reason to do this, except as we talked about last time. I think there's somebody from VentureBeat was saying, he agreed. He thinks it's a legal obligation. So that
in order to say it's the world's best gaming CPU,
right? Because remember, every single claim that they have, there's a lawyer attached to something. And again, this gets down to what we said last time. Very specifically in my interview with Anand at Intel, he said, "Hey, I said this is the world's fastest gaming CPU." He goes, "Oh no, it's the world's best gaming CPU."
World's best.
Which is funny because
it's the cutest, the best behaved. What are they talking about?
Well, because legal, it's lawyers, right? Lawyers are just, oh God, I don't know any lawyers. I have no lawyers in the family, but they must just be a bummer they just like got to be the biggest bummers in the world, right?
They're like editors, man.
You think so? I just like, you got to think like lawyers are just always the biggest bummers in the planet all the time. It's just like, you can't do that. Don't say that around me. It's like,
lawyers and parents.
But it's very much like best versus fastest. It will be the fastest gaming CPU, right? And it will be the best. But when you say best, it doesn't mean anything.
Best
is
squirrely. They could say best case. We've got this really cute diamond faceted blue case.
Sure.
That makes it the best, blue for best.
Right. So it makes you, again, as somebody was pointing out, it makes it seem like it was a legal obligation to say this. But it's unfortunate that they ran the test. Everything just, it's hard to not. I mean, I'm with you. I don't really think they intentionally did it. I don't think it's a grand conspiracy theory. But damn, it's just like everything going bad. It's like,
yep.
What are the chances of the memory and the cooler and the 1080 and then also, running it in quad channel or quad core mode? It's just like.
Well, here's the other thing. I think Intel has spent several years trying to extricate itself from the PC business, de-emphasizing it, going into servers and drones and all this other stuff. And, you want a PC chip? Sure, just take this and we'll charge you a lot of money for it, but we're not going to develop it. And I think we're also frustrated that we're on 14 nanometer plus, at this point. And they're like, and we're not quite ready with the 10 nanometer, so we might run out of chips actually. So I think I personally just feel buffeted by Intel. Like, do you love us? Do you hate us? Do you love us? Do you hate us?
Yeah. Although I think this is a good sign. I mean, that the fact that they're pushing so hard, 5 gigahertz, that's a decent clock speed for this thing, right? That is just smoking.
In recent years, since gaming's been getting hot, they've been cutting back on the drone sectors and picking up the PC, enthusiasm, which is a good sign, I think.
No, it is. It's true.
Ryzen probably pushed them into that a bit, but
which is good, right? Because you need. Yeah. I mean, they got to focus on what they do best, and Ryzen is helping them focus again. Just like all over deja vu all over again, right? Just like with the FX51.
I'm going to be really interested to see this review because the reason that Nvidia can get away with a $1,200 RTX 2080 Ti is because it doesn't have competition.
Yeah.
Right.
Intel definitely does at this point, so I'm real curious to see if they can. This $500 is going to be justified. $530. Right.
Yeah, street price list 1KU is $488. So
yeah,
if it actually settles down to $488, it might be a little more compelling. But you still got to add the cooler and everything. Whereas AMD, you get it. But at the same time, Brad. Now I'm gonna point this out. I love being devil's advocate, as everybody likes to point out. But if it's so great to get the 2700X with that cooler. That's such a great deal, right? It's a beautiful cooler. It's got RGB, which is the most important thing.
Yes.
Yep.
How is it everybody's complaining about that principal technology using that cooler?
Because it's not a similar cooler being used on the Intel one. I'd be fine if it had a 212 Evo or whatever on it, but to have a Noctua, big just honking monolith of a heatsink on there is just
it's thumb on the scale, right? It looks like thumb on the scale.
Yeah.
Which is, I know. I just want to say. It's just like with 7700K, right? Remember, everybody said Skylake to KB Lake. Everybody was like, "Oh, this is just the dumbest CPU ever. Why would you even come out with this?" And then I swear to God, 3 months later, oh my God, this KB Lake is the best gaming CPU ever. Look how much faster it is than Ryzen. But you said they didn't even need to come out with it 3 months ago. So
I remember you saying that. I still disagree with you. I think both things are true. I think both were true. It was a ho-hum upgrade, but it still was the fastest one around.
Right. I mean, was KB Lake, but KB Lake didn't really up the prices. It wasn't. Nvidia's really sort of stretched. How far they can go. I think with this series of cards. That's why I've been saying. I think 2080 Ti it's like a $1,723 CPU with 10 cores. Right. That's like It's like that inflection point where you go like, oh, what the hell were you doing? So we'll see.
And now you have to choose between the $1,000 phone, the $1,000 graphics card. Everything's $1,000. Is that the new $500? Is $1,000 $500 now?
I'm not buying either of those.
Really?
So
you're not buying a $1,000 phone?
No, I would never buy a $1,000 phone.
Yeah.
I just use my phone for Twitter and Slack and phone calls and texts.
Well, by the time you pay it off over 2 years, and it's just, I don't know, the whole phone industry, oh my God, you wish somebody would disrupt that stuff. So, but Okay, hopefully we can get to whatever. I don't know if we can say when the reviews go live, but we can definitely say...
Intel itself, I don't know if we can, but Intel itself, in response to Principal Technologies, putting out their revised benchmarks, Intel itself sent out a statement to press saying they're looking forward to independent reviews on October 19th.
Oh, okay. So then we'll see on Friday.
Interesting.
If we can hopefully get till Friday without another controversy popping up. I just don't. It's like a soap opera. I'm just kind of like, I just need to pay attention to this one thing.
There will always be something.
Do we have any questions to Clara?
Yeah, we got a couple for this section, and then we'll do just the general section. So yeah, if you have questions for just a general AMA, put them in the chat, and please at PCWorld so I can see them, because sometimes it's hard. Timothy on YouTube was asking, do you think Intel would have published these benchmarks in the revised state? I think they saw the old 50% as a freebie, and not their fault since they didn't run the tests.
Yeah, I think they would have. I think there's other obligations going on. So, and what are you going to do, right? They can't not pretend. They can't pretend they don't exist. It's going to come out no matter what. So I think they would have done it.
Okay.
And they're still best in those numbers.
I don't know if they had to publish them to begin with. I still wish they could have said that and sat on the data. And if they ever got sued, being like, yeah, we got an independent testing house. So I don't know if they would have published that data if it wasn't so favorable to begin with.
Really? Okay. We got a split decision there. Melissa, you got any thoughts?
They can't pretend those tests don't exist.
Right. I think they would have gone with it. So.
And then the last question for this section. PT is part of the XPRT group founded by Intel. So they claim 20 years of experience. Do you think that they weren't told exactly how to test?
Well, I mean, again, this gets to the conspiracy thing. Intel's a huge company. They control everything. I mean, USB, PCIe, PCI. There are just so many technologies that came out of Intel. It would be very hard to find anything in the PC industry that at some point Intel probably did not see them to get them started. Whether that is actual proof of them, intentionally saying we need you to make AMD look bad, I certainly can't say that for sure. I don't see anybody can.
My thoughts on that is I've seen that as I've seen people say that PT is owned a subsidiary of Intel, which one is not true. Two, PT works for a ton of companies, including AMD. They've done a lot of work for AMD. So, their value lies in being independent testers. Probably took a little bit of a hit with this fiasco, but I don't think they would have accepted a work order or whatever for something that would make them look dishonest. That tells them to stack the deck against a company that they've already done work with in the past and probably hope to do work with again in the future.
And last comment, friend of the show, Kyle Bennett is here. He says, I would suggest that someone at Intel marketing did not truly look at the data. I think they dropped the ball intentionally.
Maybe they signed the NDA, Kyle. Maybe they signed that NDA so they can talk about it.
All right.
Kyle wrote me a check. He wouldn't sign it. I was like, right. I can't cash it.
Imagine being at Intel marketing and you hire these independent people. Like, hey, here's your thing. We saw up to 50% gain. You'd be like, oh, great. And then just never to open it. You have that possible deniability. They're independent. We didn't want to double check them.
It is true. I mean, I have a hard time believing that. And I do agree with Kyle. Suddenly, they didn't want to look at it too hard, but I don't think there's some secret memo somewhere that's on the desk. I agree. Everything is open to discovery in a lawsuit, so I don't think so.
All the mistakes that they made, I can see how they made them genuinely. Yeah. As people who don't normally review consumer gaming hardware.
Yeah. Also, honestly, everybody made these mistakes when Ryzen came out too, right? It was like, what? 1080p medium, everybody freaked out about, and then everybody was like, yeah, I mean, they're very sensitive to memory. There were just a lot of things. They made every single mistake everybody made 2 years ago. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I have
1080p medium's not a mistake.
I agree with you, Brad. I do agree with you, but no, we won't.
We shouldn't do that again.
Yes, we have plenty of questions, so let's get to them. Are we down to get some questions?
Yeah. Go.
Another riddle on YouTube asks, do you guys think we will get PCIe Gen 5 and DDR5 on consumer boards in 2021?
I'd never guess 3 years out in technology.
We don't even have PCI 4 yet, so I think PCIe 4 is next year, maybe. So if you're talking about rolling in a PCIe 5 in 2021, no. I can say that's an absolute no. DDR5, I don't know. Maybe. It seems like it's a little close to me, but it's a possibility. 2021 is reasonable for DDR5, but PCIe 5, no way.
All right, another one from another riddle. Great question. Do you think the future of gaming will be on Linux? Valve is pushing the Proton compatibility layer, and Microsoft is trying to push everything to their store to get a cut. Who will win?
If it is, you're talking like 20 years from now. Not in the short term. I do love what Steam is doing there. There are a lot of games that just work, like 1,000 or so games just work on Linux now because Valve hit that switch. But there are many tens of thousands that still don't, because it's not as easy as you think. Because games are built for DirectX, and that's a Windows thing.
Yeah.
So, did someone whisper something?
It was me.
It was Adam.
Yeah. There was a
Brad's
ghost in the
hearing
machine.
things.
Sorry.
Brad's hearing things. What was that? Who's whispering?
But yeah, I don't foresee it happening anytime soon. However, Linux gaming is looking up, which is great. I'm a fan of Linux myself, especially after all these continued issues we've been having with Windows updates. And the more games you can play on there, the better. But I don't think it's going to be the future anytime soon.
The future.
Yeah, I'm with Brad on that. I think we're looking at long term, and I do think Valve's basically they need an escape hatch, because you never know when Microsoft is going to decide to go full on market and basically gut them. Have we even seen iTunes in the? I know they said they were going to do a Windows Store version of iTunes. I don't know if that ever came out.
Really?
I don't remember seeing it. Didn't a year after they announced it. I remember looking and not seeing it then. I'm not sure if it has since then.
Right, because I think my fear. I think Microsoft sees the store as a good way to maintain security of the applications, but also at the same time, they take their cut. But the fact that they're letting Apple in there to take a cut with iTunes, maybe there's a chance that we could see this, Steam in there as well. Maybe
and I doubt it's going to happen anytime soon. Something else that's very important to the conversation, I think, is, I think the Xbox Play Anywhere endeavor, the fact that you buy a game in the Windows 10 store, you can play it on your Xbox, vice versa. I think that's awesome. That's great. It's bringing things like Forza to the PC, which is awesome. But in general, the Windows Store is dumpster fire, garbage trash for gamers. It's indescribable how amazingly shitty it is.
Hey.
And I try not to cuss, but it is. And they've had it for 6 years now.
How do you really feel, Brad?
Yeah, because in so many ways. We did an article on it. We had someone do an article on it, Doc Buford, a couple years ago, describing 4,000 words how terrible it is, and nothing has gotten better. It's only gotten worse. I want to buy Forza Horizon 4 because I love the Forza series. I bought Forza Horizon 3 the day it came out on PC. I had so many issues with it, that I'm just not buying Forza Horizon 4. So I don't think Microsoft is that close to dominating PC gaming anytime soon.
No, they're not going to dominate. Yeah, it is really. I don't know if anybody's and I can legitimately ask because no one's ever gone into the store for anything, right? But it basically the quality of it is about 3 steps lower than the dollar store you go into generally. It's just like, I'm downloading this app from Uzbekistan or something for to access my Gmail. That doesn't seem legit. But that's all. It really is.
We just lost our Uzbeki audience.
That one developer is like, hey, yeah, thanks for the shout out for my Gmail app. But it is bad. But I do think I applaud Valve for what they're doing. Right, you got to have an out, and it'll keep Microsoft honest. If they ever do consider walling Windows off and going full on Apple, they haven't done that yet, but you can sort of feel it on Mac land. But if they ever sort of walled off the prison, then we'd have a place to go for gaming outside. So I think Valve needs to keep pushing on that. So it's a good thing.
All right, Brandon Hall.
That touched some feelings.
Yeah, nice. Brandon Hall says that they are building a Ryzen 1950X gaming/content creation/streaming PC for their first build. I'm looking into buying a 2080 Ti. Is that needed for this build? They don't mind waiting.
there's no reason for you, depending on what you're doing. There's no reason that you need a 2080 Ti as far as streaming and playing your games is concerned. You can get by with something cheaper. Even the 1080 Ti or 2080 would be great for it for $500 less. If whatever you're doing needs the extra GPU horsepower to work faster, I mean, it's worthwhile. Depends on what exactly your production is going to be.
Okie dokie. Dark Titan on YouTube. When are you expecting the next gen Nvidia GPUs? 6 or 12 months?
Not 6 months,
Already.
But I wouldn't be surprised if it's next year. I've said that since the minute these were announced. I think this is going to be a hopefully I'm right, because they are not tremendously better than the previous generation. But I expect these to be a short stopgap thing before 7 nanometer.
All right. Halistine says they wanted me to tell you, Gordon, that they used MSI 1080 Ti Gaming X is still going strong at 2 gigahertz. They got lucky.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, some people just don't want to roll that dice. If you do, that's good. That's
where I am.
I wouldn't want to roll the dice in $500 or $400 on eBay,
Yeah.
so it's a tough one. You certainly can't recommend everybody do it, right? So
no, it's all about your risk factor and what you're willing to gamble. Because, there's a better than 50-50 chance, I think, that the part you get will be just fine.
yeah,
I mean, even 75% chance that you'll probably be just fine. But there's a 25% chance that I won't, and I don't want to go through that. I'm just pulling those numbers out of my butt. But, there's a great chance. There's a greater than I'm comfortable with chance buying high-end CPUs and GPUs used.
Yeah, I'm more so with CPUs. I feel a little better because
Nothing's moving.
they weren't running at 100% overvolted for 8 months. But I sort of think for video cards a little tougher. But again, it depends on how cheap you are. So if you got a 1080, if you're saying roll the dice in $200, I might do it. I might do it.
Yeah.
But $400,
I'd be a lot more comfortable if it was local and you can see it in the system.
Yeah, but how would you ever know, right? You would just never know if it was driven hard. So,
Yeah.
Richard asks, should I go get that Noctua cooler for my 2700X?
Yes.
Well, that was easy.
Those Noctua coolers are great, though, in all honesty. And 100X is very responsive to temperatures, right, Gordon?
Yeah, definitely. Although I think people are making a little too much of it. It probably depends on the load. More so, it's like the current. Like it's just like Threadripper. You run into those current limits very quickly with the CPU. So,
yep.
But definitely, yeah. I don't know, but I like that. That stock cooler is just awesome with RGB. It's got the heat pipes and everything. It's a good cooler.
It sure is.
For free.
Joseph asks, when do you think we'll see a 4K UHD 1440 hertz HDR monitor with G-Sync or FreeSync at 32 inches or larger?
Hopefully next year. These first round of FreeSync and G-Sync 4K 144 hertz monitors are all 27 inches. I believe they're all coming from, what is it? AU Optronics or whatever.
Yeah.
That's one of my biggest complaints with the Predator 27 other G-Sync monitors, HDR monitors, is that they are 27 inches. Because to me, for 4K, you want 32. Hopefully it's coming sooner than later. They're already working on 60-inch monitors, so just meet us in the middle, guys.
That 60 is pretty nice.
Just want to say that Andre Andrev in the YouTube chat, if you're going to be an asshole like that, I'm going to ban you. So don't say dumb stuff.
Hey!
Sorry.
Disney sponsorship.
Dark Titan is asking, what happened to VR? It faded.
It was overhyped to begin with.
Well, yeah, everybody's job is to overhype it, but I think it's still there. I think it's pretty awesome still.
It is. It's just you need pretty expensive hardware to enjoy it.
Right. It'll keep.
It's
coming.
getting a lot more affordable now. $400 with a $500-ish computer will get you by, which is still very expensive for most people I know. But it's a lot less than it was to begin with. For me, the issue is more like I have an HTC Vive. For me, space is an issue. I know for a lot of people, space is an issue. Like, you got to move the coffee table in the living room in order to play it or whatever. For me, just the fact that it is so isolating is a factor for me, because then I can't sit there and play games with my kids or, talk to other people in the room, in the house and stuff like that, because you are fully immersed, which is great, but it's also kind of dystopian and weird.
Yeah.
I've discovered using it long term.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Remember when
I love it, but it's still really weird.
Remember when we played that multiplayer Star Trek game?
Yeah. Bridge Crew. Yeah.
Bridge Crew. So that was the one time that I didn't feel isolated doing sort of virtual reality.
Yeah. But no, I
still love it.
These are like first generation devices practically. So it's going to be around. This is not 3D. I mean, if everybody remembers 3D gaming, where it was actually 3D panels, it just was not great. This is more than that. It'll keep going. So give it.
VR is great. If you have a Vive or an Oculus, if you play, I think it's called the BLU, which is just basically an underwater. There's whales coming by you and stuff. It'll blow your mind.
It's awesome.
Our VR expert Hayden says continues to think, has always thought that the best place for this is like arcades and educational experiences. Like he went to a museum in Cologne when we were over there for Gamescom, and they had a VR exhibit where you could actually put the VR headset on, and they walked you through old Cologne before it got bombed out. And that's awesome. And stuff like that, I think, is probably going to pick up faster than consumer VR inside the households.
Nice. Let's get some rapid fire questions here and then finish it up. Judo Chidan, do you think that if Huawei or Xiaomi ever get into the U.S. market, they will disrupt the U.S. phone market? This question's for me, not really a full nerd thing, but no.
What?
The answer is no. They sound Chinese. I can't see Americans being
what are you talking about?
It just needs a different brand. It just needs brand.
In the U.S., it's Pixel, iPhone, Samsung, and nobody else.
I mean, it's not even Pixel. Pixel's just like such a small part of the market share. So really, it's just Samsung and iPhone. So.
Yeah, but if Huawei rebranded just as H, right?
Well,
and you got like.
Well, they already have Honor.
They have Honor.
Yeah, Honor was their U.S. brand that was easy to pronounce.
I thought that was the budget brand.
Well, it's budget, but I mean, that's where all the money is. So, but like if you can't get into the budget market, you're not going to be able to get into the high end.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't know. I think if it were cheap enough, people go for it.
With the current political climate, I don't think it's going to be something that we need to worry about in the next few years at the very least.
Yeah.
I just wanted to answer that one because I like talking about phones. Damon is asking or saying that Amazon has a 1080 Ti for $760 and a 2080 for $848. Which should they buy? Turing worth the HDR bump? Looking to game at 4K 60 with HDR.
You should go to Newegg if you can, because Newegg has much more competitive prices.
But at that
HDR,
price?
At that price, that's high. There is an HDR difference with Turing. If you're using standard HDR 4444, it's you're not going to see much of a loss in performance with the RTX 2080, whereas you do with Pascal. I don't know if it's $100 worth of difference. I mean, if you're talking 10% at 60, that's 6 frames per second. I don't know if I'd spend $100 for 6 frames per second, and it's not 10%.
My vote is yes, because you've already crossed the line. And I think I've said this many times before. I'm not going to back off from it. You've already crossed that line in the high end. Why are you buying a 2-year-old graphics core for full list price, right? We're talking about $760, which is like that's what the damn thing came out at 18-20 months ago.
Go to Newegg. You can find them a lot cheaper. I think you'll find much better options for both parts there, and you'll have much better decisions either way if you go to Newegg if you're in the U.S.
I'm just saying you don't buy the 2014 Chevy next to the 2015 and pay the 2014 price for it. That's on principle. I just can't do it.
All right, more.
But if you can go on Newegg and find a $700 1080 Ti and all the 2080s are $100 to $150 more, that's different.
Yeah, but you've already you've already crossed that line.
Yeah.
You're buying an $800 video card to brag to people.
Cobra 1977 says, I'm currently using onboard graphics, but want to get a card for around 650 to 750. What's that L? Is that pounds? I don't know what that is. It looks like a little L with a line in it. I think it's pounds. Anyway,
yes.
I currently game at 1440p at 60 hertz, but want to upgrade to 4K, maybe 60. Which card would you recommend?
Wait, what? He's playing IGP at
IGP right now. He's saying onboard graphics, current gaming at 1440p at 60 hertz, but they want to upgrade to 4K 60.
It sounds like if you're using these to game in esports like League of Legends or Dota or something like that, you could get by real good with like an RX 580. Because if you're using IGP to get that kind of frame rates now, it probably is esports or older titles or indie titles or whatever. So I would say a 580 would probably be a good purchase. If you're looking to play modern, cutting edge AAA games in that price range, either the RTX 2070, if you're looking more for the 1440 boost, or if you're looking to really game in 4K more, the 1080 Ti or the RTX 2080. Which we actually have a breakdown of those two versus each other on PCWorld.com if you search for it, and it's much more objective than Gordon is.
PCWorld.com. Okay, next question. Ishan, with the new 4K 1440 hertz 10-bit monitor, are we going to get a new DisplayPort version to actually support it at some point soon?
The new Nvidia graphics cards are already ready for the next one. I forget what it's called, like 1.4A or B or something like that.
Yeah, but are you saying she is asking if it supports 10-bit?
Yes.
It does up to 98 hertz.
Gaming.
For gaming, yes. For gaming, if you're gaming on the G-Sync HDR monitors, up to 98 hertz is pure 10-bit, no chroma subsampling. If you go above that, you're either going to have to go to the YCRB, I forget the other kind of high HDR output, or you're going to have to use chroma subsampling.
But if you're looking for
98
pro apps,
hertz
though,
at 4K is already good.
Yeah. But if they're looking for cheap 10-bit support, no, it's not going to happen. You got to buy Quadro for that.
All right, a couple more. Chivas for live. What wattage would you recommend for a 9900K and an RTX 2080?
For power supply?
Power supply wattage.
It's looking like 7, 8 probably. I don't know what's the 2080 doing. It's not too bad, right?
It's not too bad. If you're going to overclock any of it, go a bit higher. If you're going to overclock those two things, I'd go 850.
Yeah, and my general recommendation is to buy more, because on really hot days, the output from the power supply does sag. So especially if it's not the greatest power supply. So if you overbuy, then you're going to be good on those really hot days in your case where it might be a lot hotter. So it doesn't hurt you to buy too much. It might be a little less efficient, but generally it's better to have more. But if you were like going cheap, 750 probably do it, I think. Yeah.
It's funny, during the when Maxwell came out, the 900 series cards for Nvidia, and back then when Intel was pushing efficiency over performance gains, like you could get by with a gaming PC with 650 watts. But these days, all the companies are starting to put the pedal to the metal a bit more. So I would recommend, 750, 850 for a top end like gaming PC like that these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
Overclocking makes a huge difference with the GPUs. Like massive. Once you start to overclocking these, you see massive differences once you apply those 4 to 5% performance gains.
Yeah, same thing with CPU. You start just really eating into your wattage once you start overclocking everything. Yep. So I would, 850s. Yeah. Of course, brand really matters too. Don't go out and buy the one that says 850 on it with the sticker. They just changed it for you,
or the one that comes with your case.
Unless you have to. You got no choice.
You love it. 2 more questions and a comment. Fragalot on Twitch is saying, I wish Nvidia would stop installing 3D Vision drivers when I update my drivers. Who uses those anymore?
At least make it optional. Yep, I totally agree.
Well, it is, because can't you just say like a custom install? Because I think it's only when you do express install that it just does it all.
I'm not sure that 3D Vision is included in there.
Really? Oh, okay.
It might be. It might be.
Right? I still have a 3D Vision projector somewhere, I think. So it's,
Nice.
Express install is always a bad idea. It is.
That's how you get Cortana.
Exactly.
and an ID, an advertising ID on Windows.
I know.
Gaming with War is asking. They have a first gen Ryzen 1700 that's giving them some headaches. Should they wait around for Zen 2 or wait? Should they get a Zen 2 or wait for a 9900K to come down in price?
Well, I mean, gosh, you're looking at an 8-core 1700. It feels crazy to just, e-waste it, or, I guess if you're selling it, but I would probably just figure out what the issue is. Well, I guess I'd want to know what the headache is, You should be able to hopefully solve it, but yeah, you're going from a pretty low-cost CPU to $523 plus cooler, so it's not...
Plus motherboard.
It's a big leap.
Like they're saying, if ideally, hopefully you can figure out the issue and it's not the CPU and you can fix whatever the underlying issue is. But if I was in your shoes, I would probably go for the 2700X because your motherboard's already going to be compatible with it and it's going to cost several $100s less. And if you're already happy with what the 1700 gives you in performance, it's just not stable, then I would think the 2700 or 2700X would be good options.
Right. But I also sort of think a 27 or 1700 really shouldn't have any problems with, so figure out what's wrong. You could end up going out and getting a brand new CPU, motherboard, RAM, and everything and have the same problem because it's your power supply.
Well, yeah, my first question was, what did you do to it?
Yeah. Who knows what? I would like to know what
maybe they followed the Verge's PC build guide.
Shots fired. Can't do that.
Anyway, last question from Araiba. I don't know how to say it. Will we ever see a clean-shaved Brad?
No. You'll see me trimmed sometime, like when I have to go to a wedding or something, but that's as close as you're going to get. Actually, I have a big old Jay Leno-style butt chin underneath here.
Nice. Really?
Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome.
I just thought it was your brand.
Yeah, man.
Somebody says you're trying to emulate Steve from Gamers Nexus,
Oh, I had this going long before. Go back a year and look at Gamers Nexus video. I was doing this long before he started ignoring shavers.
Beard comparison. Adam, I was just thinking you'd be great. He's for hire. Everybody wants to know if your high school graduation needs somebody to call the names out. Adam Patrick Murray is available.
Come get your diploma.
And then you could just see the principals going like, "What? This guy can't get any of these right. They're spelled out phonetically."
Sorry.
He's doing it on purpose. No, he just,
No, I'm just...
That would be awesome, though, if you, called out the high school.
Yeah.
High school
hey, you know what? I'm open for that. Come email me, Adam_Patrick_Murray at idg.com.
For hire for the high school.
Yeah, I will show up to your high school and
I'm
read the names.
Adam up for all the mailing lists now.
Join Smythe. John Smith.
You know what? There's that Key and Peele episode, the substitute teacher, where he messes up all the names. Aaron.
Yes.
Oh, it's hilarious. Supposedly they're making a movie about that or something.
Oh, really?
That character. Anyway, it was great.
Okay.
Cool. Let's wrap it up.
Wrap it up here. Check back next week for your fix of PC talk on the Full Nerd. For audio listeners, subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. Please leave a review. Every time you do, Adam gets a name wrong. That's where it comes from. Send questions and comments to thefullnerd@PCWorld.com. Thanks for coming. I'm Gordon Ung with Brad Charkis.
Adios.
Melissa Riofrio.
Bye.
And Adam Patrick Murrah will take us out.
Hey, we'll see you later, Garden.